Deep beneath the sands of an uncharted desert, a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Ilara Voss stumbled upon what seemed to be a natural sinkhole. But as they descended, they realized it was anything but natural. A spiral staircase carved into obsidian stone led them into the earth, each step echoing with an eerie hum, as if the rock itself remembered voices from long ago. At the bottom, they found an enormous sealed door, covered in a language no one had seen before, not in any ancient text or lost civilization. Its carvings glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat, and the air grew colder the closer they came. Ilara, a scholar obsessed with forgotten worlds, felt drawn to it, convinced this was the discovery that would rewrite history, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Strange symbols surrounded the door in concentric circles, and in the center was an image of 7 tall, hooded figures with hollow eyes and hands reaching out, not in welcome, but in warning. The team's linguist, Carter, managed to translate just a few words etched around the image. Do not wake them. Bound in sleep for a reason. Despite this, the team pressed forward, believing the warnings were myth, superstition, maybe even a deterrent to grave robbers. But when Ilara placed her hand on the central stone, it grew warm under her palm and shifted with a low groan, dust falling like snow as the ancient seal slowly cracked open. A gust of wind blew from within, wind that should not exist that far, underground, and with it came whispers, soft at first, then louder, overlapping in countless tongues, all repeating one thing. They sleep. Let them sleep. But curiosity had already won, and the door opened just wide enough to reveal a dark corridor beyond, walls lined with what looked like skeletal guardians and symbols that pulsed faster now, like a warning heart ready to burst. One by one, the team stepped inside, unaware that each step was a trigger, each breath a countdown, and the further they went, the more the air vibrated with something ancient and angry waking from dreams older than civilization. The last thing the surface saw of them was their camp, abandoned by morning, equipment still running, coffee still warm, and a single word scrawled into the sand where their footprints ended. Run. The corridor stretched endlessly into the dark, the dim glow from the symbols offering just enough light to push back the shadows, but not enough to silence the fear that grew with every step. Ilara led the way, her fingers brushing the walls, feeling a subtle vibration pulsing beneath the stone, like the heartbeat of something dormant but aware, something watching. Behind her, Carter muttered notes into his recorder, his voice increasingly shaken as the symbols around them began to change, not just glowing but shifting, as though alive, rearranging themselves to form new warnings. You were told. You were warned. You will not leave. At first, the team tried to rationalize it, maybe gas leaks causing hallucinations, maybe psychological stress. But then the lights on their equipment began to flicker, batteries draining in seconds, cameras glitching into static whenever they pointed ahead. Then came the sound, faint at first, like whispering wind, but layered with voices, some human, some not, calling their names from the darkness. One of the team, Malik, rushed back toward the entrance, panic overtaking curiosity, but he never reached the surface. His scream echoed through the tunnel, followed by silence, and when the others found the spot where he'd vanished, only his boots remained, standing upright and smoldering, as if he had been plucked out of existence by something invisible and burning. Panic gripped the group, but Ilara pressed on, driven by obsession or perhaps something more, something that had latched onto her mind the moment she touched the stone door. The corridor ended in a vast underground chamber, so large the ceiling disappeared into darkness, and in the center stood 7 massive stone caskets, each one bound in chains carved with the same symbols from the door, symbols now flashing, red with urgency. Carter translated the new script quickly, his hands shaking. 7 watchers, 7 sins, 7 sealed. Disturb not their slumber. But as the group moved closer, the air began to shimmer like heat haze, and a low hum turned into a deep resonating growl, not of machinery, but something alive and furious. Then one of the caskets shuddered, chains groaning as they strained to hold whatever was inside, and a crack appeared down its center. The team screamed for Ilara to stop, to go back, to seal the place forever. But she stepped forward, drawn in a trance, whispering back that she understood now, that these were not gods or demons, but the first, the primordial, beings so ancient. Even the earth itself had forgotten them. They had not ruled, they had consumed, and those who came before humanity had bound them in sleep using a language now lost, until she found it. Another casket shuddered, its crack glowing with a sickly, green light, and then another. Carter collapsed, clutching his head. His eyes rolled back as he began to speak in a voice not his own. They stir. They remember. You have failed the last warning. The ground began to tremble, dust falling from the unseen ceiling above, and the first casket burst open with an explosive hiss of cold air and darkness that bled into the room like living ink. From within rose a figure impossibly tall, its face hidden behind a mask of bone and ash, its limbs elongated and unnaturally smooth, as if it had been sculpted rather than born. It didn't move like a creature, but like a shadow stretched across time, its presence alone enough to make the team fall to their knees, bleeding from eyes and nose, gasping for air that no longer filled their lungs. Ilara, still standing, smiled, a broken, hollow expression as she whispered, "At last," before the being reached out and touched her forehead. She did not scream. She simply unraveled, her body turning to dust that danced upward into the dark like ash caught in a breath of wind. The others tried to run, but the chamber had shifted. Walls now pulsed with flesh-like texture, doors had vanished, and more caskets began to open. Carter, in a last burst of clarity, hurled his recorder toward the crack in the chamber ceiling, hoping it might reach the surface before he too was claimed. As more beings emerged, the whispers returned. Now not warnings, but chants. The sleep is ended. The hunger returns. Somewhere above, at the camp long since abandoned, the recorder burst from the earth in a spray of sand, landing beside a research drone still recording. The drone's camera, half buried, caught the audio, guttural chants in ancient tongues, and the last words of Carter Voss, brother of Ilara, barely audible through static. They are awake. Tell the world. Burn the map. Never come here. But by the time the footage was reviewed weeks later by a second team, drawn by the mystery of the vanished crew, it was already too late. For in the darkness below, the seven were stirring, the chains shattered, and the earth itself had begun to forget what had once kept them buried. The second expedition arrived under the cover of night, unaware they were being watched long before they set foot on the sands. Led by Dr. Jonah Reeves, a skeptic with no belief in the supernatural, they dismissed the first team's disappearance as environmental misfortune. But unease settled quickly. Animals refused to go near the site, compasses spun wildly, and the air carried a metallic taste no one could explain. They found the old camp just as the footage had shown, equipment still intact, tents untouched, and that single haunting word burned into the sand. Run. Despite the warnings, Reeves pushed forward, driven by fame, ambition, and a desire to disprove what he called superstitious nonsense. But when they uncovered the sinkhole again, it was different. Wider now, darker, as if the earth itself had opened wider to welcome them back. They descended carefully, flashlights flickering, silence pressing in on all sides like a living thing. The spiral staircase was still intact, but strange symbols had grown along the walls. New ones, wet and glistening, as though freshly carved by unseen hands. At the base, the great stone door stood open, as if inviting them in. One of the team, Nadia, refused to go further. She had read Carter's notes and believed every word. She stayed above, alone, while the rest of the team entered the corridor. The walls no longer glowed, they pulsed, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat fading in and out of sync. Then the whispering began again. No names this time, only one, phrase over and over. They walk. Reeves tried to rationalize it, chalking it up to wind through the tunnels, but the others felt it. Something had changed. The chamber was different too. The 7 caskets were shattered, their remains scattered like broken tombstones, and the floor was covered in ash and footprints, inhuman, elongated, some with claws instead of toes. They were no longer sleeping. They were moving. And they were not alone. A new door stood at the back of the chamber, tall and open, darkness bleeding from it like ink and water. Beyond it, they heard movement, wet, dragging, low, guttural breaths that grew louder with every second. Reeves raised his camera to film, but something yanked him into the dark, his scream echoing once before silence swallowed it whole. The rest ran, but the corridor twisted behind them, reshaping, closing, laughing. Only Nadia remained on the surface, watching the sky turn gray at noon as distant tremors rolled beneath her feet. Something had been released, and it was already spreading.